52nd meeting of the Security Council is called to order. The provisional agenda for this meeting is threats to international peace and security. The agenda is adopted. I wish to warmly welcome the distinguished ministers and other distinguished representatives present in the Security Council chamber. Your presence today underscores the importance of the subject matter under discussion. In accordance with the Rule 37 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite the representatives of Australia, Austria, Bahrain, Belgium, Bulgaria, Cambodia, Canada, Croatia, Czech Republic, Djibouti, Estonia, Finland, Germany, Hungary, Iceland, Iraq, Israel, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Morocco, the Netherlands, Nigeria, Norway, Oman, Peru, Poland, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, and Turkey to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. The Security Council will now begin its consideration of item 2 of the agenda. Members of the Council have before them document S/2017/88, the text of the draft resolution submitted by Australia, Austria, Bahrain, Belgium, Bulgaria, Cambodia, Canada, Croatia, Czech Republic, Djibouti, Estonia, Ethiopia, Finland, France, Germany, Hungary, Iceland, Iraq, Israel, Italy, Japan, Kazakhstan, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Morocco, the Netherlands, Nigeria, Norway, Oman, Peru, Poland, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Senegal, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, Sweden, Turkey, Ukraine, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, the United States of America, and Uruguay. I wish to draw the attention of the Council members to document S/2017/710, a letter dated 14 August 2017 from the Charge d'Affaires AI of the Permanent Mission of Iraq to the United Nations addressed to the President of the Security Council. The Council is ready to proceed to the vote on the draft resolution before it. I shall put the draft resolution to the vote now. With those in favor of the draft resolution contained in document S/2017/788, please raise their hand. The result of the voting is as follows. The draft resolution received 15 votes in favor. The draft resolution has been adopted unanimously as Resolution 2379/2017. I now give the floor to those members of the Council who wish to make statements after the vote. I give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Alistair Burt, Minister of State for the Middle East and the Middle East of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
Mr. President, Your Excellencies, I'm delighted to have cast the United Kingdom's vote in favour of this resolution, and I'm grateful to Council members for their unanimous support of this UK drafted text. 1 year after we gathered on the margins of the last UN General Assembly and promised to do all we could to bring Daesh to justice, this resolution is a vital step towards achieving that profoundly necessary goal. And as we vote in this chamber, we think of the people who've suffered so grievously at the hands of Daesh, of the innocents whose homelands were overrun, of the millions who were forced to flee, of the suffering inflicted on those who stayed, many of whom were massacred or enslaved, of the civilians who died in terrorist attacks in Europe and around the world, and of the great cities that were occupied and pillaged and subjected to rule by terror. There can never be adequate recompense for those who were forced to endure the wanton brutality of Daesh, and the dead will not be brought back. But this resolution means that the international community is united in our belief that there should at least be accountability for those who perpetrated such wicked acts. The United Nations will now help to gather and preserve evidence of Daesh's crimes in Iraq. I can announce that Britain will provide £1 million to establish the UN investigative team that will lead these efforts, and I would respectfully encourage other countries to contribute. Bringing Daesh to justice is only possible because Iraq's courageous armed forces have liberated one city after another, including Mosul. Advancing with the support of many nations, including my own, who sent their warplanes into action against the terrorists, breaking Daesh's grip on about 3/4 of the Iraqi territory they once occupied. Wherever Daesh have been driven back in Iraq, the painstaking process of gathering evidence of their crimes can now proceed under the auspices of the UN. As the United Kingdom Commissioner for the International Commission of Missing Persons, set up after the conflict in former Yugoslavia, it's my hope that some of this evidence will help Iraqi families find out the fate and even the remains of their loved ones, especially in the terrible mass graves which dot the lands which Daesh occupied. Britain has worked closely with the government of Iraq to bring forward this resolution, and we will continue to work alongside the government of Iraq and our partners to implement this resolution, ensuring that the UN does everything possible to support domestic and international efforts to hold Daesh to account. And by striving for justice, we shall also be seeking to heal the sectarian divides that Daesh has exploited and inflamed. The defeat of Daesh as a territorial entity is now within sight, but their downfall will not in itself create peace and stability. Lasting peace will only be secured once we've helped Iraq to overcome sectarian division and achieve the national unity that its people deserve. And justice is an essential requirement for reaching that goal. For it's justice that leads to reconciliation. And reconciliation is the only way to protect a society, any society, against extremists who would sow hatred and division. This is why we must help Iraq strengthen its justice system to ensure all those who commit atrocities in the conflict are brought to justice. In the meantime, we know that bringing Daesh to justice will take time, demanding patience and resolve from us all. But we owe it to those who have suffered to press ahead, however long the road might be, remembering that many offenders have been prosecuted years after they committed their crimes, as those in Srebrenica will remember. I will close by reminding the Council of an old phrase: the millstones of justice turn exceeding slow, but they grind exceeding fine. Those millstones have begun moving today. I want to thank my friend, the Foreign Minister, and the Government of Iraq for our work together in making this resolution a reality. Let us make the consequences of the resolution a reality and bring some justice for those who have suffered for too long. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank His Excellency Mr. Barrett for his statement. I give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Angelino Alfano, Minister for Foreign Affairs of International Cooperation of Italy.
Dear colleagues, today's vote in the Security Council is a very important step in holding Daesh accountable for war crimes and crimes against humanity. Inhumanity has been the essence of the horrific offenses perpetrated by Daesh in its cruel ideology. Few times in history have we seen such deliberate and systematic acts of murder, kidnapping, suicide bombing, sexual violence, enslavement, persecution of religious minorities, and destruction of cultural heritage. I salute the courage of the Iraqi people, who have made a huge sacrifice in the war on terror. I also praise the commitment of the Iraqi authorities to uphold the rule of law. It was in the lands of ancient Mesopotamia that the world was given its first written laws, the Code of Hammurabi. In the words of King Hammurabi, to destroy the wicked and the evil doers so they do not harm the weak. However, today, no one is asking on an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth, as in the old days of Hammurabi. We voted in favor of this resolution to help achieve something more difficult, to eradicate impunity by law alone. That's accountability. At the same time, accountability means rejecting the temptation of revenge and retribution. For example, the risk of collective punishment of entire families associated with Daesh outside of the law. This would not help our cause to uphold human rights and fundamental freedoms. We voted in favor of this resolution to support our Iraqi partners in investigating the atrocious crimes committed for the law to be enforced and violations sanctioned swiftly. In fact, the fear of being caught is often a more powerful deterrent than the punishment itself. Therefore, we stand with Iraq to tell anyone who hasn't joined or will join the cause of terror that they will be identified and there will be serious consequences for their actions. We also stand with the victims and their families who have suffered great pain and are still facing a huge humanitarian crisis because of Daesh. For all these reasons, Italy will do everything it can for the success of the new investigative team and its special envoy. As you know, Italy is a close partner of Iraq. In the global coalition against Daesh, we have helped train around 30,000 Iraqi military and police units. Many of these police officers have also been trained in anti-terrorism investigation to guarantee security, public order, and the rule of law. Dear colleagues, we are entering in a new phase of cooperation with Iraq. We are winning the war on terror militarily, but where terrorism has left destruction and hatred, we cannot win the peace without a long-term commitment to stabilization, inclusive political dialogue, reconciliation, and accountability in the eyes of the law. Therefore, I believe that today's resolution is an important decision in this right direction, because the law is the pillar of our societies. Anyone that subjects other humans to act that are less than human offends humanity and spreads insecurity in our international order founded on the principle that respect of the law is the safeguard of human rights and fundamental liberties. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank His Excellency Minister Alfano for his statement. I give the floor to Her Excellency Ms. Margot Wallström, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Sweden.
Thank you, Mr. President, Excellencies. So, the nightmare of Daesh rule is finally coming to an end for the millions of Iraqis who have been affected. The victory over Daesh is the result of the commitment and resilience of the Iraqi government and people, and I pay tribute to them and to the Iraqi security forces for their determination. Yet in some ways, the victory over Daesh is, as we've heard already, only the beginning of a long road ahead. The hard work of healing the wounds of the survivors, as well as the wounds left on Iraqi society, must now begin. Sweden welcomes the adoption of today's resolution, which is an important first step towards holding those responsible for the atrocities carried out by Daesh to account. We welcome the global advocacy role of the special advisor established by this resolution, and that other member states can request assistance from the team with the approval of the Security Council. This resolution is also an example of how the Security Council can take action in support of accountability. This is encouraging, as to date, advancing international justice in the Council has sometimes been difficult, not least in Syria. Accountability is critical to delivering on the Council's aims of reconciliation and sustaining peace. Mr. President, let me make 3 short points relating to the resolution we've just adopted and its implementation. Firstly, Daesh has shown an extraordinary cruelty towards men, women and children. And just to remind the Council today that women and children have been used as human shields, executed in public, abducted, enslaved, raped, sold like livestock, and exploited as suicide bombers. We have heard heartbreaking stories from Yazidis, among many others, testifying to such barbaric acts, and respect to courageous survivor Nadia Murad, who is actually present here today. Today's action by the Council marks a victory for the women who have survived Daesh and who bravely spoke out to demand justice. And I really pay tribute to their courage. We must now ensure that the investigative team is equipped with the expertise and resources necessary to gather evidence for crimes against women and children, including sexual and gender-based violence. Secondly, Sweden was among the first countries to prosecute suspected perpetrators of alleged war crimes in Iraq, as well as in Syria. And finally, we urge the Iraqi authorities to put in place national legislation that ensures all perpetrators of international crimes are tried in Iraq. All suspected war crimes must be afforded due process and investigated in an impartial and fair way. This is essential for the maintenance of the rule of law and crucial for the reconciliation process. Sweden, as you know, unequivocally opposed to the death penalty, expects that the investigative team will not contribute to trials that may lead to capital punishment in line with UN standards. We welcome the work of the UN to support the Iraqi authorities' efforts to reform their justice sector, strengthen the rule of law and the respect for human rights. So, Mr. President, after the military defeat of Daesh and the end of its brutal rule, the Iraqi government and people must turn their attention to reconciliation and building an Iraqi state that represents all Iraqis. This will take political courage and cooperation. They can rely on Sweden as a committed partner in this next critical phase. Thank you.
I thank Her Excellency Minister Wallström for her statement. Now I give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Karat Adrakamanov, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Kazakhstan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to express our very sincere gratitude for the determined commitment demonstrated by the governments of Iraq and the United Kingdom, which resulted in the unanimous adoption of this landmark resolution by the Security Council. The resolution also indicates our wholehearted endorsement of the international efforts to combat this common evil of terrorism that is confronting the entire international community. The liberation of Mosul, the last stronghold of Daesh in Iraq, by the Iraqi and coalition forces was received in my part of the world and in Kazakhstan in particular with great satisfaction, as well as deep sorrow, given the high price paid for this victory by the long-suffering Iraqi people. The adoption of today's resolution supporting the launch of investigative team to hold ISIL accountable is an important milestone in bringing this terrorist group to justice for all of the atrocities committed on the territory of Iraq and beyond. The collection, analysis, use and preservation of credible evidence will serve to implement the principle of the inevitability of the prosecution and punishment of members of Daesh, wherever they are, for committing atrocious crimes against humanity, war crimes, terrorism, crimes against children, women, civilians and other victims. We also hold the perpetrators responsible for the destruction of cultural heritage sites. My delegation places high expectations in the investigative team to be established by this resolution and joins other Security Council members in calling on all interested states to cooperate with the team. The adopted resolution contains the key elements to effectively counter Daesh and prosecute this transnational terrorist group. The courage and consolidation of Iraqi society for liberation of Mosul commands our respect and confidence that Iraqi people will also be united in establishing the rule of law in the country and in restoring all that has been destroyed. The unfailing national solidarity and sacrifice made for this, their country, will also over time return refugees to their homes, normalizing life, rehabilitating ISIL victims, and among them, sadly, there are many families from our part of the world, and promoting sustainable development. It is obvious that only the elimination of socio-economic factors which give rise to terrorism will prevent the return of chaos, suffering, and irreparable loss among the civilian population and give them new hope for a better future. Kazakhstan is in a firm conviction that a holistic and systematic approach by the international community, represented by the member states of the United Nations and international organizations, can be a solution to the complex phenomenon of international terrorism. From the cause of its emergence, such a strategy will bring responsible and accountability to the entire chain of terrorist groups, including organizers, ideologists, militants, their financiers and other accomplices. It is very important also for my country and for Central Asia, as soon as we really very much working today in order to prevent the spillover of the terroristic activity to our very stable today part of our community. Kazakhstan, with its deep beliefs in human dignity, justice and freedom, joined the other member states in upholding and fully implementing this resolution in accordance with the highest principle of the UN Charter. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank His Excellency Minister Abdurrahmanov for his statement. Now I give the floor to Her Excellency Ms. Nikki Haley, Permanent Representative of the United States and member of President Trump's cabinet.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for your leadership with this session. The idea of seeking justice for victims of genocide, crimes against humanity, and other atrocity crimes had its beginning in the years following World War II. Nothing could replace the lives lost or make families whole again. But by holding perpetrators to account for their crimes, a measure of justice was provided to the victims and the loved ones they left behind. By acting here today, we too cannot restore the lives, the dignity, and the innocence of the victims of crimes committed by the Islamic State. But by taking this important step towards holding ISIS accountable for its many unspeakable crimes, we can achieve justice. And that, in time, will hopefully begin a process of healing. It may have taken a long time to get here, but today's resolution is a landmark. It is a major first step towards addressing the death, suffering, and injury of the victims of crimes committed by ISIS in Iraq, crimes that include genocide. These victims have been Yazidis, Christians, Shia and Sunni Muslims, and many, many more. In the long history of human beings committing atrocities against their fellow human beings, the crimes of ISIS stand out, especially the brutality they inflicted on girls and women. Thousands of Yazidi women and girls have been kidnapped by ISIS and then bought and sold like animals. I have met with some of these women. The victims of rape and sexual slavery are understandably reluctant to speak out publicly. But thanks to what we do here today, the world will still hear about their suffering. The investigative team created by this resolution is part of a comprehensive approach to holding ISIS accountable for its atrocities against the Iraqi people. Working with the Iraqi and other partners, it will expose ISIS's depravity and provide an indispensable record of the scope and scale of its criminality. With victory over ISIS in Iraq on the horizon, this record will play an important role as Iraqis attempt to reconcile this painful period of their national life. This team will help to identify victims and perpetrators. It will help bring perpetrators to face the justice they so richly deserve, giving victims their day in court. And in doing so, we hope and pray that the Iraqi people can begin the process of returning to peaceful, normal, everyday lives. The United States was honored to work alongside our Iraqi and British partners over the course of the past year to make this resolution a reality. We thank them for their dedication of seeing this through. And while this resolution is about the transnational ISIS threat, we support accountability for all violations of international humanitarian law and human rights violations and abuses. Above all, we thank the Iraqi government and Prime Minister Abadi for taking this important first step towards demonstrating that justice is never beyond reach, that no victim is voiceless, and that no perpetrator is above the law. Thank you.
I thank Her Excellency Ms. Heli for her statement. Now I give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Gennady Gatilov, Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation.
President, thank you so much.
Мы твердо убеждены, что
We're firmly
преступления
convinced that
террористов
ISIL
ИГИЛ не должны
crimes
оставаться
must not go unpunished,
где бы они ни
regardless
совершались.
of where they are committed.
Приветствуем успехи
We welcome the
иракских
successes of
вооруженных
the
сил
Iraqi
на
armed
направлении
forces
борьбы
in their
с ИГИЛ,
fight against ISIL
восстановления суверенитета
and in
страны.
restoring the
Готовы
country's
и далее
sovereignty.
поддерживать
We are ready
усилия
to continue to back the
руководства
efforts
Ирака
of Iraq's
как в
leadership,
политическом,
both
так и
on the
практическом
political
плане.
and the practical tracks.
Искоренять угрозу ИГИЛ необходимо
The threat
везде,
of ISIL must be
где
eradicated
террористы
everywhere
действуют
where terrorists
при этом
rage, and
единым
we must act
фронтом.
as a united front in doing so.
Принятая резолюция
The adopted
отмечается
resolution
глобальный
notes the
характер
global
угрозы со стороны
nature
ИГИЛ
of the threat
и
posed by ISIL
объединение членов
and the
КП
unity
в борьбе
of
с
the
ним.
members of the Council in their fight against them.
Добиться успехов в ней можно
Success
только
will
на
only be
прочной
achieved
основе
on the
международного
solid
права,
basis of
не
international law,
игнорируя суверенитет
without ignoring the
государств,
sovereignty of states
подвергшихся атаке
struck by
террористов,
terrorist
а
attacks,
наоборот,
but rather by
взаимодействуя
cooperating
с ними.
with them.
Именно на таких принципах
It is on these
строится операция
principles
российских
that the
воздушно-космических
Russian aerospace
сил в
forces
Сирии,
operation in
что
Syria is
является
based,
ключевой
and this
предпосылкой
is
ее
the key
эффективности.
prerequisite for its effectiveness.
Мы вновь отмечаем
We again
необходимость
note the
усиления
need
координации
to
и
bolster
сотрудничества
coordination
государств
cooperation
в деле
between states
разгрома ИГИЛ,
in destroying ISIL, Jabhat al-Nusra, and associated groups.
При этом
In doing
не
so,
должно быть двойных
there should be no
стандартов,
double
в том числе
standards, including
применительно к
when it comes
осуществлению
to
правосудия.
dispensing justice.
Насколько мы понимаем,
As we
проект
understand it,
принятой
the
сегодня резолюции,
draft of
которая
the resolution
предусматривает
adopted today,
создание
which provides
группы
for
по
the
сбору и
creation of a
хранению
team to
доказательств
collect,
преступлений,
preserve, and store
совершенных
evidence of crimes
террористами
committed
ИГИЛ
by
на территории Ирака,
ISIL terrorists in Iraq was discussed
властями
in
этой
detail
страны.
with this country's
Мы приветствуем
authorities.
такой подход.
We commend this approach.
К сожалению, его придерживаются
Unfortunately,
не всегда.
this approach
Так,
is not
инициаторы
always followed.
нелегитимного
Thus, the
решения
initiators
Генеральной
of the
Ассамблеи
legitimate
по, в
GA
общем-то,
decision
аналогичной
on a
структуре
by and large
отношений
similar
Сирии
structure for
даже не
Syria
сочли
didn't
необходимым
even
поговорить
consider it
с Дамаском.
necessary to talk to
Мы еще
Damascus.
раз призываем
We again urge
Генерального секретаря и
the Secretary General
государства-члена
and member
отказаться от
states
поддержки
to refrain from
так
supporting
называемого
the
механизма
so-called
по сбору доказательств
evidence
в Сирии,
collecting mechanism
созданного
in
в
Syria,
нарушение
created
устава
in
ООН.
breach of the United Nations Charter.
Господин председатель, в
President,
нынешних условиях,
in current
наряду с
conditions,
военным
alongside
давлением на
the
ИГИЛ,
military pressure on
приоритетное
ISIL, what is of
значение
priority
приобретает
importance
работа
is
национальных
work on
уголовно-правовых
national criminal
механизмов,
justice mechanisms
основанная на
based
универсально
on
признанных стандартах.
universally recognized
Резолюции
standards.
Совета требует
The
не
Security
допустить
Council
того,
resolution
чтобы
demands
у
that
террористов
terrorists
появилась
not
малейшая
be
возможность
provided with
избежать
even the
правосудия.
slightest chance
Важно,
of avoiding
чтобы
justice.
все их
It is important
преступления,
that all of their
какой бы
crimes,
категорию
regardless
они ни
of their
относились, и
category, story, and, first and foremost, terrorist acts be punished in proportion to their gravity. The main role in bringing terrorists to justice remains with the government of states affected by such evil acts. We believe that today's resolution in no way undermines this tenet and creates no new precedents. We view it in the context of criminal rather than international humanitarian law. We welcome the drive of the government of Iraq to strengthen their national criminal justice system, and we cherish the hope that the team set up by the Council will make its contribution to this endeavor, acting impartially, in transparency, and in full keeping with international law, including, of course, the UN Charter. Sir, I thank you.
I thank His Excellency Mr. Gatilov for his statement. Now I give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Jean-Baptiste Lemien, Secretary of State attached to the Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs of France.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, ministers, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to convey my gratitude to the Ethiopian Presidency for having afforded this Council the opportunity to reaffirm its determination to fight against terrorism and to assist the Iraqi people as well as the Iraqi authorities on their path towards peace, stability and unity. I would like to here welcome the presence of the Foreign Minister of Iraq, who stood with us this morning. Now, on Tuesday, in his address to the General Assembly, the President of the Republic, Emmanuel Macron, referred to our duty to speak up for those who are not heard, for the forgotten voices. I heard, we have all heard, for example, the voice of Nadia Murad, the Yazidi victim who wanted justice to be brought by setting up this investigation mechanism. Thank you for speaking up. The eradication of Daesh and the stabilization of Iraq constitutes a main priority for France, which will continue to assist the reconstruction of Iraq to achieve a sustainable peace, lasting one, which would reconcile all of the components of Iraqi society. As our Foreign Minister, Jean-Yves Le Drian, committed to in Baghdad on the 25th and 26th of August. The unanimous adoption of the resolution proposed by the United Kingdom in response to the request of the Iraqi Prime Minister will enable the United Nations to back the Iraqi authorities in collecting evidence of serious crimes committed by Daesh by the setting up of an investigative team. These crimes are intolerable, cannot be erased, and of course, evidence must not be erased by passing time. It also must not go unpunished. The numerous victims of this are owed this. We welcome this contribution, concrete contribution by the Security Council to justice. This must serve as a first step, a major step, a signal that the building of the rule of law in Iraq has been engaged upon, and France backs full. Over and beyond this, France reiterates support to the Iraqi government to fight against impunity for all crimes, regardless of who the perpetrators are, within the framework of independent and impartial judicial institutions, with all necessary procedural guarantees, including human rights guarantees. You know that France is wedded to the respect for human rights. Our refusal and rejection of the death penalty, it is essential that the evidence collected by the United Nations investigation team be used within the framework of procedures which respect the practices in the United Nations. These requirements will have to be reflected in the terms of reference of the United Nations investigative team, and we call upon the team to closely coordinate with the United Nations Assistance Mission in Iraq, as well as relevant international criminal justice mechanisms and national jurisdictions. Justice and the rule of law are the corollary of peace and stability in Iraq. Now, this new page to be written in Iraq will require the resolute commitment of all to mobilize on issues of governance and national reconciliation to ensure that everyone has a place in the Iraq of tomorrow. The complete defeat of Daesh requires it. And until this happens, this vote is a tool and a symbol which is useful and precious. I thank you, sir.
I thank His Excellency Mr. Lemien for his statement. Now I give the floor to the representative of Ukraine.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to start by thanking the United Kingdom for initiating today's resolution and for taking on board a number of suggestions, including from my delegation. As ISIL continues to lose territory, there are many challenges that the government of Iraq has to tackle in order to ensure post-conflict restoration. Such restoration involves initiatives on rebuilding vitally important infrastructure, carrying out national reconciliation, facilitating IDP's safe and voluntary return, ensuring respect for human rights, fundamental freedoms, and international humanitarian law. Bringing to justice those who made the country and its population suffer from acts of terrorism is high on the list of priorities too. Therefore, this resolution is a welcome and much anticipated initiative that gives Iraq necessary support in addressing this issue with the aid of the United Nations investigative team. It will put at Iraq's disposal available international and regional mechanisms for judicial cooperation and technical assistance in investigating terrorist crimes and gathering credible evidence hot on the trail before perpetrators can cover up their wrongdoings. It will facilitate and streamline efforts of international community in assisting this country in strengthening the capacity of its law enforcement and judicial bodies. Mr. President, I would like to raise a few points with regard to the implementation of the present resolution. First, the team should cooperate fully with the UNAMI, international and regional governmental and non-governmental organizations that can assist in collecting evidence and testimonies on ISIL's crimes committed in Iraq. Second, unprecedented numbers of foreign terrorist fighters in ISIL ranks make the crimes perpetrated by them transnational. Thus, for the sake of efficiently apprehending and prosecuting those terrorists, we encourage the government of Iraq to join efforts with other states and share the evidence collected by the team without any limits or reservation. Third, these pieces of evidence have to be admissible not only to the Iraqi national courts, but also to courts of other states upon their request. For this purpose, the team has to conduct its work in accordance with the universally recognized standards for collecting evidence. Last but not least, it is imperative that all those responsible for committing crimes against civil population, in particular violations of international humanitarian law and abuses of human rights, must be held accountable without any preconditions. Victims of those crimes deserve nothing less. In this regard, we encourage the Iraqi authorities to meticulously observe due process and uphold human rights, in particular right to a fair trial, as there can be no place for victors' justice. Finally, Mr. President, Ukraine stands ready to further contribute to the cause of accountability for terrorist crimes committed by ISIL. I thank you.
Representative of Ukraine for his statement. Now I give the floor for the representative of China.
Mr. President, China welcomes the Security Council's unanimous adoption of its Resolution 2379. The Iraqi government, under the leadership of its Prime Minister al-Abadi, made good progress in advancing institutional reform of the government, promoting national reconciliation, easing humanitarian situation, and fostering economic development. China commends such efforts. We hope that Iraq will realize its national security and stability sooner, and that Iraqi people will lead a peaceful, stable life at an early date. The terrorist activities of ISIL in Iraq seriously threatened the Iraqi regional and international peace and safety. China commends the Iraqi government for their unrelenting efforts in combating ISIL and its major progress achieved in counterterrorism. China supports Iraq in its effort to bring ISIL personnel to justice according to its domestic law and supports the international community in providing assistance to Iraqi government at its request. Resolution 2379 specifies the principle of respecting Iraq's sovereignty, territorial integrity, independence, and unity in light of the UN Charter, establishes an investigative team in assisting the Iraqi government to collect the evidence of ISIL's crimes committed in Iraq. and emphasizes that the investigative team shall respect the sovereignty and jurisprudence of Iraq and carry out its responsibilities strictly according to the mandate requested by Iraq, and that the use of evidence must seek the consent of the Iraqi government. The content of this resolution has the recognition of the Iraqi government. China supports this. We hope that this resolution will be implemented effectively and play its constructive role in strengthening the capacity building of the Iraqi government in seeking accountability of the terrorist organizations. Mr. President, at present the international counterterrorism situation is still grave. Terrorist organizations such as ISIL, Al-Qaeda are conducting terrorist activities, spreading extremist ideologies in many different ways. The international community should strengthen cooperation, support all counterterrorism efforts, including that of Iraq. The international community should continue to strengthen cooperation, unify standards, adopt effective measures, and resolutely fight against terrorist organizations listed by the Security Council. China would like to continue to work with Iraq and all other countries in our joint effort to make new advances in international counterterrorism cooperation. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of China for his statement. Now I give the floor for the representative of Bolivia.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Bolivia desea agradecer a su presidencia por haber convocado esta reunión y agradecer a la delegación del Reino Unido por los trabajos en la aprobación de esta resolución. Saludamos también la presencia del ministro de Relaciones Exteriores de la República de Irak, la señora Abdul Karim Al-Jafari, quien nos acompaña en la sesión. Asimismo, quiero saludar a Nadia Murad, quien nos acompaña también en esta reunión.
Who's at this meeting as well, and I would like to say to Ambassador Nadia Murad,
Bolivia
voted in favor of today's resolution because it believes that fighting Daesh, as led by the Iraqi people, deserves not just the full backing of this council, but also the entire membership of our organization. We wish to express our most sincere recognition to the courageous self-sacrifice and determined battle waged by the Iraqi security forces and the Iraqi people, and which they continue to wage in order to definitively eradicate Daesh from the Republic of Iraq. This is a war they wage on behalf of us all. It is important to bear in mind that the brutality of Daesh continues
constituyéndose no solo en una amenaza regional, como lo pudimos evidenciar en el atentado perpetrado el 14 de septiembre pasado, donde más de 80 personas perdieron la vida en el sur de Irak, sino que representa una amenaza global, como lo pudimos evidenciar en Barcelona hace unos días, en Afganistán,
en Barcelona,
en
Afghanistan,
en
Egypt,
en Francia.
in the United Kingdom, in Belgium, and in
Señor
France.
Presidente, consideramos que la resolución que
Mr. President,
acabamos
we
de
believe
aprobar
that the resolution
debe
that we just
indudablemente
approved
aplicarse en el marco del
must
respeto de la
undoubtedly be
soberanía,
implemented in the
independencia e
context of
integridad
full respect
territorial
for
de la
sovereignty,
República de Irak,
independence, and integrity,
complementando el
territorial
trabajo
integrity
de
of the
sus
Republic of
instituciones
Iraq
gubernamentales
as a
para que los
complement
responsables de
to
los
the
actos
efforts of
atroces
government
cometidos por
institutions,
Daesh,
so
entre
that
los que se
the
encuentran
Daesh
delitos de lesa
perpetrators of
humanidad,
atrocities,
vulneraciones en contra
which
de los derechos
include
humanos
crimes
y del
against
derecho
humanity,
internacional humanitario,
violations of human
sean
rights, and
debidamente
breaches of
investigados,
international law, will be
procesados
duly
y
investigated,
sancionados.
tried, and
Esperamos
punished.
que el trabajo y las
It is our
evidencias que
hope
el
that the
equipo de
work
investigación
and the
obtenga
evidence collected by
contribuyan
the
para brindarle
investigative team
justicia al pueblo
will
iraquí
contribute to
y a
bringing
todas las
justice for
víctimas
the
de las
Iraqi people
atrocidades
and for all
cometidas
the
por
victims
Daesh
of the
alrededor
heinous
del mundo.
acts committed by the
Asimismo,
Daesh around the
esperamos
world.
que este trabajo
We
permita
also
llevar
hope
ante
that
la
this work
justicia
will
a los
make it possible
responsables
to bring
del
the
tráfico ilícito
perpetrators
y destrucción
of
de bienes
illicit trafficking
patrimoniales,
and destruction of cultural
culturales,
heritage
como
to
el perpetrado
justice.
en contra de la gran mezquita de
Crimes such
Al-Nuri el
as
21
the
de
attack
junio del
against
año
the
en
great
curso,
mosque of
cuyo incalculable valor
Al-Nuri
histórico,
on the
patrimonial y
21st of
cultural
June.
se constituye en una pérdida
Of
irreparable
incalculable
para el acervo
historical and
histórico
cultural value,
iraquí
which
y de la
is an
humanidad.
irreparable
Es
loss
un lamentable
for
testimonio
Iraqi
de la
historical
barbarie
heritage
de
and
Daesh.
for the world. It is a very
Señor Presidente,
unfortunate
Bolivia
testimony of
reitera
the barbarity of
que
the Daesh.
condena en
Finally,
términos
sir,
más severos
we would
todo
reiterate
acto de
that
terrorismo
Bolivia
por ser
condemns in
criminal
the
e
most severe
injustificable
terms any
donde
act of
quiera,
terrorism committed
cuando y por
as
quien quiera
criminal
que
and
sea cometido
unjustifiable
wherever it takes place, by whomever and for whatever reason, and we reaffirm the need for terrorism to be fought by all means possible in keeping with the United Nations Charter and international law. Reconciliation is not synonymous with forgetfulness. It is not a synonym of impunity. Reconciliation is synonymous with satisfaction of the right to truth, the right to justice, and the right to reparations, and of the right for these acts to never be repeated again. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Bolivia for his statement. Now I give the floor for the representative of Senegal.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you so much, President.
President,
the Senegalese delegation wishes at the outset to convey its gratitude to the Ethiopian presidency for having organized this meeting. We also welcome the presence amongst us of His Excellency, Mr. Ibrahim Abdul Karim Al-Jafari, Foreign Minister of Iraq. President, Senegal was a co-sponsor of 2379, which the Security Council has just adopted unanimously. And we did this to reaffirm the position that all of us here share as a community of nations regarding the reprehensible nature of terrorism and violent extremism, and especially the acts and abuses of human rights and international humanitarian law committed by Islamic State, both in Iraq and in Syria, known as Daesh, an organization which more than ever in the past appears to be a global threat. With the setting up of the investigative team led by a special council in implementation of the mandate which has just been adopted, the United Nations will be able to lend the necessary assistance to the Iraqi authorities to gather evidence on the basis of the best standards in the field on acts which could be associated to those of war crimes, crimes against humanity, crimes of genocide committed by ISIL, and this to help shed light on the truth, and in doing this, facilitating the necessary bringing to justice of the perpetrator. It also opens the door to interesting prospects in terms of cooperation with member states in the field of international criminal justice on acts carried out by Daesh. President, through this resolution we're also manifesting our solidarity vis-à-vis the people and government of Iraq. And we wish to reiterate our congratulations to them for the decisive victories they have achieved in their fight against ISIL. We harbor no doubt that with the support of the international community, including the United Nations, via its assistance mission in Iraq, the Iraqi authorities will continue their efforts aimed at reconciliation to eradicate in a lasting way the ISIL ideology. And by way of conclusion, I would like to convey my gratitude to the delegation of the United Kingdom for their ongoing efforts during the whole process of negotiations, which of course enabled us to achieve this result, harbinger of great hope for the many victims who deserve that justice be dispensed. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Senegal for his statement. Now I give the floor to the representative of Japan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Japan welcomes the unanimous adoption of the resolution and is pleased to have co-sponsored it. I would like to express my gratitude to the United Kingdom for taking the lead on drafting this important resolution. We support the resolution setting up the investigative team that assists Iraq in collecting evidence of crimes committed by ISIL, including those that may amount to war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. Collecting and preserving evidence is essential in order to bring the perpetrators of those crimes to justice in the future. We strongly hope that through its impartial and independent investigation, the team will help Iraq in preventing violent extremism and in promoting national reconciliation among the people. Japan will continue to stand with the people of Iraq in fighting with the violent extremism. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Japan. Now I give the floor to the representative of Uruguay.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much, sir.
Saludamos la presencia en
We
sala de
commend
varios ministros de Relaciones
the presence in
Exteriores
this room of a number of different foreign affairs ministers and vice ministers
Particularmente,
and
señor
deputy ministers.
presidente,
Sir,
saludamos la presencia
we'd also
en
like to
sala
extend our
de la
greetings
señora Nadia
to
Murad,
Madam Nadia Murad,
a quien rendimos
to whom
sentido homenaje
we
por su
pay
coraje
a
y
heartfelt
dignidad.
tribute for her dignity and courage.
Agradecemos al Reino Unido,
We would like
así
to thank the
como a
United
Irak,
Kingdom and Iraq
por el liderazgo en la
for
negociación de
their
la
leadership
resolución
in
que
negotiating
hemos hoy
the resolution
adoptado
that
por
we just
unanimidad.
adopted today unanimously.
Uruguay ha votado a favor de esta
Uruguay voted in
resolución y la ha
favor of this
copatrocinado
resolution and
porque
co-sponsored
entiende
it
que se trata de una
because it
importante
understands that this
iniciativa
is an important
que busca
initiative
llevar ante la
which
justicia
seeks to
a
bring
los
to
miembros del
justice
grupo terrorista Daesh,
members of the
responsables
terrorist
de
group
crímenes
Daesh, which
de la
are
máxima gravedad.
responsible for
Señor presidente, los crímenes de guerra,
the
los crímenes
worst
de lesa
possible crimes,
humanidad
crimes
y el
against
genocidio
humanity,
no pueden quedar
genocide.
impunes
Mr.
bajo
President,
ninguna
cannot go
circunstancia
unpunished under
donde
any
quiera que
circumstance,
ellos se cometan.
wherever those acts are
Los
committed.
crímenes cometidos por Daesh no pueden ni deben
The
escapar de esta
crimes
regla.
committed by Daesh
Los actos
cannot
deben
and
ser
should not escape this
penalizados
rule.
con
They
toda la
should be
fuerza de
punished
la ley.
with the full force of the law.
El respeto de los derechos humanos
The respect
y la
of human
justicia
rights
son dos
and justice
conceptos
are two concepts
intrínsecamente unidos.
which are
Brindar
intrinsically
justicia a las víctimas
linked,
y a sus familiares
bringing justice
y
to
proteger
the
a todos
victims
los
and their families
integrantes de
and
una
protecting
sociedad
all
sin
members
distinción
of a
de etnia,
society
religión o
without
género,
ethnic
es
or
un
religious
deber
or
de los
gender-based
Estados.
distinction is a duty of states.
La Declaración Universal de Derechos
The Universal
Humanos, en su
Declaration of Human
preámbulo,
Rights in its
señala
preamble
que la
indicates
libertad, la justicia
that
y la
freedom,
paz en el mundo
justice, and
tienen
peace
por
in the
base
world
el reconocimiento
are based
de la
on
dignidad
the recognition
intrínseca y de
of
los
the
derechos
intrinsic
iguales e
dignity
inalienables
and
de todos los
inalienable
miembros
equal
de la
rights
familia humana.
of all members of the human
El
family.
efecto ejemplarizante
Indeed,
reviste igualmente gran importancia.
This
Además
is
de
a
los
great
esfuerzos
example of
llevados
this, in
adelante por el
addition to
gobierno de
the
Irak
forces
para
efforts
combatir
undertaken by the
militarmente
Iraqi
a Daesh,
government to
llevar ante la
militarily
justicia a sus
combat
líderes y
Daesh,
miembros responsables de haber
the leaders
cometido
and
crímenes
officials who
contribuirá
have been
a desacreditar
brought
al grupo
to
exponiendo
justice will
la
help to
atrocidad de
undermine
sus
and
actos
discredit the
ante
group
la
and its
opinión
acts
pública
before
con
public
un deseable
opinion
efecto disuasorio para
with
quienes pudieran
positive
pasar
effects
sentido atraído
for anyone who
por
might
él.
have been otherwise
Por estas
attracted to this
razones
group.
consideramos
For
que
this
el
reason,
pedido de
we
asistencia
believe that the
internacional
request for
efectuado por el
international
gobierno de Irak
assistance put forth by
para
the government of
recoger y
Iraq to
conservar
collect
los medios de prueba
and
que
preserve
permitan llevar ante la
evidence
justicia
in order
a
to
los
bring
responsables de
the
Daesh
perpetrators
por
of
este
Daesh
tipo
to
de
justice
crímenes dentro de su
for this
territorio
kind of
merece
crime
la atención
and to do so on
y
their
el apoyo
territory
de este
deserves the
Consejo
support
y
and
de las
attention of
Naciones
this
Unidas.
Council and the United Nations as a whole.
También, señor presidente,
Also,
debemos
Mr.
señalar
President, we would like to
que
underscore
confiamos que
that we
similar apoyo
trust
será
that similar
igualmente
support
brindado
will also be
cuando
provided
llegue el momento de
when the
rendir
time
cuentas,
comes
porque llegará el
for
momento de rendir
accountability,
cuentas
because it will
por los
happen
crímenes cometidos
for
en
crimes
Siria,
against humanity
Somalia,
in Syria,
Yemen, y
Somalia,
lamentablemente
Yemen,
tantos
and unfortunately
otros
so many
escenarios.
other scenarios.
Uruguay considera que es
Uruguay
esencial
believes that
erradicar
it
la
is key
discriminación
to
y la
eliminate
violencia
discrimination
sexual
and sexual
contra la mujer
violence
en todos los
against
ámbitos.
women in all arenas.
El uso generalizado y
The
sistemático de la
widespread and
violencia sexual
systematic
contra
use
mujeres
of
y niños
sexual violence
como
against
armas de guerra
girls and
y su
women
empleo
as
por
a
grupos
weapon of war
terroristas
and
como
used by terrorists
táctica de terror
as
merece
a
la
terror
más firme
tactic
condena de
deserves
todas
the
las
strongest
sociedades
condemnation,
sin
the strongest
distinción
terms by
de
all
ninguna
societies
naturaleza.
without any distinction.
Esta condena debe ser
This
efectiva y
condemnation
cristalizar
must
en
be
hechos.
effective and crystallized in
Consideramos que es
actual
fundamental que el
actions.
equipo de
And we believe that it is key
cuente
the
con al menos
investigative
un
team have
experto
at least
en
one
temas de
expert
género,
on
violencia
the
sexual
subject of
y
sexual
protección de
violence,
niños.
gender, and protection of
Señor
children.
presidente, finalmente
Mr. President,
quisiéramos recordar
finally,
en
we
esta
would like to
oportunidad
recall at this
la
time
importancia de la
the
cooperación jurídica
importance of
internacional
legal
en la
mutual
lucha
cooperation
contra el
amongst
terrorismo
different nations at the international level to fight terrorism, and Resolution 2322 adopted by this Council, which in the preamble underscores the importance of strengthening cooperation internationally for the investigators, prosecutors, and judges to prevent and investigate terrorist acts and especially investigate the perpetrators of such acts. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Uruguay for his statement. Now I give the floor to the representative of Egypt.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. أود في البداية
Mr. President.
To begin with, I would like to congratulate Ethiopia on presiding over the Security Council during this month of September, and I would like to thank the UK for its initiative and efforts throughout the past month, which led to the resolution we have just adopted. I would like also to congratulate Iraq, the brotherly country, for its contribution in this important step to hold Daesh accountable for its crimes in Iraq. Mr. President, the crimes committed by ISIS in Iraq or in other places where it exists are unprecedented in their criminality and cruelty. They made no distinction between children, women, or elderly. Hence, it's inevitable to ensure accountability for these crimes, either to seek justice for the innocent victims or to establish deterrence. Accountability should not be limited to the direct perpetrators of any of these crimes. Those who incite, finance, provide weapons or safe haven, or facilitate the commission of these crimes should also be held accountable. In this vein, we stress that holding accountable those responsible for the crimes committed by ISIS in Iraq is a crucial aspect in fighting terrorism in this brotherly country. It is vital in the comprehensive counter-terrorism approach at the global level. Mr. President, today's resolution contains a number of provisions related to the establishment of the team which will collect evidence related to the crimes committed by ISIS. The team will help in the relative investigations. 1 year ago, since Egypt has been informed about this subject and throughout the consultations about the draft resolution, Egypt insisted on the respect for the sovereignty of Iraq and the independence of its judicial system. It stressed that Iraq should approve all the provisions and details of the resolution. In addition, Egypt also emphasized that the approval of any country other than Iraq should be obtained before the new team has taken any action or initiated investigations related to nationals of these other countries. I would like also to stress that accountability for ISIS in Iraq is an important step towards achieving intercommunal reconciliation. Such will prevent the re-emergence of ISIS, undoubtedly, or the emergence of any other terrorist organization. In addition, the international community should move ahead with the efforts to reconstruct the areas liberated from ISIS and build the capacities of Iraq, in particularly in the fields of judiciary and in security and counterterrorism in general. In doing so, it should observe the principle of national ownership. In this vein, I would like to stress that Egypt, as it chairs the Counter-Terrorism Committee, has given special attention to building the capacities of Iraq in countering terrorism and holding accountable those responsible for the crimes committed in Iraq. The committee held a number of meetings in Iraq with donors for Iraq, and the Counter-Terrorism Executive Directorate of the Counter-Terrorism Committee made many visits to Baghdad to support the efforts of Iraq in countering terrorism. Mr. President, today's resolution sends an important message, a message to terrorism that the international community is united and determined to eradicate it. A message to the international community to stop any form of support to terrorism. The Council's adoption of a resolution on holding ISIS accountable for its crimes is important. However, what is more important is the political will of states to implement this resolution and other Security Council resolutions related to counterterrorism. The Council should closely follow the implementation of this resolution and hold accountable those states which do not fully comply and those who continue supporting terrorism and providing shelter for terrorists. I would like to stress that Egypt will maintain its commitment to be in the forefront of the efforts of the international community to defeat terrorism. Egypt will take all measures possible, as required by the international law, to counter terrorism and contend with the states which support it. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Egypt for his statement. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as a Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ethiopia. We welcome the unanimous adoption of the Resolution 2379/2017 on ensuring accountability of members of ISIL or Daesh for their crimes in Iraq, including where those may amount to crimes against humanity. We would like to thank the pen holder, United Kingdom, for all its effort on this text. The adoption of this resolution today is indeed an appropriate response to the request made by the Iraqi government calling for the assistance of the international community in ensuring accountability of members of Daesh for the crimes they committed. We'd like to take this opportunity to express appreciation to the government of Iraq for all its efforts in this regard. The presence today of the Foreign Minister of Iraq demonstrates the importance that his government attaches to this matter. No doubt ISIL or Daesh continues a global threat to international peace and security, and this doesn't require lengthy explanations. It is self-evident. Through its commission of acts involving murder, kidnapping, hostage-taking, suicide bombings, destruction of cultural heritage, Daesh has committed very serious crimes which many amount to war crimes, crimes against humanity or genocide. We will never forget the loss of our Ethiopian compatriots who were mercilessly massacred by ISIL Daesh in Libya, and that is why we supported this resolution which aims to hold members of ISIL Daesh accountable for the crime they committed in Iraq. The adoption of this resolution is indeed very significant, not only to address the plight of the victims and to serve justice. It will also greatly assist in countering terrorism and violent extremism. The proper collection and preservation of evidence related to crimes that have been committed by ISIL or Daesh is indeed critical to ensure accountability. In this regard, we support the establishment of an investigative team headed by a special envoy to support Iraq's efforts by collecting and preserving evidence in Iraq of acts that may amount to war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide committed by ISIL Daesh. Thus, we believe should be done with full respect for the sovereignty of Iraq and its jurisdiction over crimes committed in its territory. In light of the severity of the crime committed by Daesh and the magnitude of the challenge the country faces, Iraq will need appropriate technical support and capacity building. We understand that it is in this context that the resolution encourages member states and regional and intergovernmental organizations to provide appropriate legal assistance and capacity building to the government of Iraq in order to strengthen its courts and judicial system. Let me therefore conclude by expressing our full support to the efforts aimed to ensuring accountability of ISIL Daesh members for all the crimes they committed, not only in Iraq, but also in our parts of the world. I thank you. Now I assume my function as a President of the Council. I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Ibrahim Abdul Karim Al-Jafari, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Iraq.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. شكرا جزيلا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And if I may, at the outset, I would like to congratulate Ethiopia on its presidency of the Council during this month, and I'd also like to express my gratitude to Ethiopia for its efforts in this regard. I'd also like to thank the delegation of Egypt during its presidency last month for its efforts in the same regard. We had last year, on the 19th of September 2016, a meeting at headquarters in New York, a high-level meeting involving participation of Iraq, the United Kingdom, and Belgium. At the time, we'd expressed the unity of the international community in condemning the grave violations of human rights committed by Daesh gangs, the terrorists in Iraq, and committed to bringing these perpetrators to justice. That historic meeting was the result of effective participation in studies based on constructive cooperation and a clear vision between the United Kingdom and Iraq in order to establish an international mechanism that would respect Iraq's sovereignty and territorial integrity and its judiciary system to collect evidence to bring these perpetrators to justice. You are not, of course, ignorant of the fact that the legal system in Iraq dates back several hundred years, starting with the year 1792. That was the first law enacted, the law of Muhammad. That was the first written law of the time. We applaud the efforts of the United Kingdom in its efforts with Iraq, be it in Baghdad or New York over the last month, to draft a resolution that would respond to Iraq's concerns. And we'd like to especially thank the Special Representative and his entire team in New York and the team of the embassy in Baghdad. They worked untiringly with the permanent representative of our nation in order to reach a consensus-based and balanced text for the resolution. We also commend the contribution of member states of your August body during consultations and negotiations on the draft resolution, which no doubt enhanced the substance and form of the resolution. And we'd like to thank you for your understanding and for acceding to the Iraqi request for assistance in bringing the perpetrators of Daesh to justice. No doubt you're aware of the destruction and loss of human lives during the war in Iraq. And that destruction is not limited just to Iraq. Wherever Daesh exists, its presence is synonymous with misery and destruction. And during this war, it's necessary to safeguard and highlight the sacrifices of our people. Iraq had a very bitter experience, suffered atrocities, both against civilians, especially minorities, Christians, Turkmens, Shabak, and others. There's been oppression of women, children, in regions that were under Daesh control. The Turkmen and others. In my view, the international community needs to bear in mind this experience and the threat it constitutes for all of mankind, to be sure that this experience is never repeated again anywhere in the world. The resolution of incrimination, Daesh, is a victory for justice, a victory for humanity, and a victory for the victims. It's an expression of the practical rejection of Daesh brutality and effective condemnation of its aggressive behavior pursuant to Daesh action, we can hope that this will serve as a deterrent to others that would follow its example. We would like to thank the Security Council for its efforts in this regard, and we are aware of the importance of a deterrence. This is a warning being sounded for all those who work with this gang and who would support it in an ideological or financial or media way. This is based on essential foundation of the full respect of Iraqi sovereignty and its legal and judicial jurisdiction in order to collect evidence of crimes committed by Daesh and the evidence presented by the investigative team presented to international experts and Iraqi judges. There are a number of pillars that support this system. First, the international community's support of Iraq in collecting evidence that will carry legal value for international crimes, not within the Iraqi legal system. Two, to transmit the international expertise of the legal experts in the investigative team to Iraqi justice, who better understand the Iraqi system of justice that needs to be used during this investigative system. Assistance brought to other countries, which include citizens from other countries, of which one of them might belong to Daesh. This is based on the agreements and the measures that will be referenced in the terms of reference between Iraq and the United Nations Secretariat. The purpose of this is to hold Daesh accountable and to put in place the various pillars of an international campaign in this regard. For the success of this international campaign to bring the Daesh leaders to justice is a mission that requires serious cooperation of all member states of the United Nations by sharing information they have available about Daesh, and also through mutual legal aid between the team and the countries. The wording of the resolution highlights the importance of respecting international sovereignty and the Charter of the United Nations. 5, international and regional levels of cooperation and assistance being brought to the team as set forth in the resolution. And any type of assistance is to be provided to strengthen the international and the Iraqi judiciary system to promote the rule of law and stop impunity. 6, during the negotiations on this resolution, it affirmed that the terms of reference, which provides a context for the work of the team in Iraq, need to be acceptable to the Iraqi government. This complete agreement and acceptance is in keeping with the principle of sovereignty and holding accountable those that have perpetrated crimes on Iraqi soil. We are working with the United Nations to ensure that these terms of reference are propitious and that the team will be able to acquit itself of its responsibilities under those terms of reference. And the Special Advisor Secretary General will be heading the team in a constructive manner, and we will endeavor to facilitate his or her work according to the mandate conferred upon him. We will do everything necessary so that this mission enjoys full success. In this context, the government of Iraq appeals to the international community to provide as much assistance as possible, especially for reintegration and rehabilitation efforts for those who have escaped from terrorism and violence so that they can come back to their communities and stop the physical and psychological suffering that they will have. Finally, I would like to say that the victory in Iraq is a fruit of the unity of all Iraqis, Muslim, Shia, Sunni, Kurd, Turkmen, Christians, and others. This is unity of all factions within Iraq, which is unprecedented and exceptional, and it demonstrates the will of an international community. For the first time, we see countries of the world standing together to fight a single enemy. In the same room in 2009, I attended a session and I gave my first speech. And since 2014 and up till today, we have been committed on a path full of sacrifice, destruction, and bloodshed. And yet, the result is the same. The truth stands shining in its absoluteness. It is the result of the will of your people to fight Daesh as well. We will arrive at reconciliation in the community so that citizens can be reassured, so that displaced and refugees can return home. And the truth and the future require serious cooperation to stop extremism and terrorism so that these crimes are no longer committed. Thank you.
I thank His Excellency Minister Al-Jafari for his statement. There is no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. The meeting is adjourned.